Welcome to today's Planning Committee meeting. There are 6 applications on the agenda. With the report on planning appeals, I am happy with this and intend to take the business in the order set out on the agenda. The first item is apologies for absence. Have we received any in advance?
Yes, Chair, we've received apologies from Councillor N. Morley, who is being substituted by Councillor Seager.
Thank you, Ellen. Are there any other apologies?
None received, Chair.
Members are requested to declare the existence and nature of any disclosable pecuniary interest and or other interests not already on their register of interests in any item on the agenda and withdraw from the meeting at the appropriate time. Do any members have any interest to declare?
None received, Chair.
Item 3 on the agenda now is the minutes of our last meeting held on the 6th of June this year. Are we happy that they are a correct record? Is there a mover?
I'll move them, Chair.
And second, all those in favour? All those against? Any abstentions? Okay. Motion is carried. Thanks, colleagues. That brings us to the main business for the meeting, our 6 applications. Before we start, I would like the clerk to explain for the benefit of members, speakers, and those watching on YouTube how we will deal with them.
Thank you, Chair. This is the procedure for considering the business this afternoon. The Chair will introduce an application, then ask the planning officers to refer members to any late comments or updates received since the agenda was issued. These have been published on the Council's website and hard copies have been circulated to you. After this, the Chair will ask any speakers to address the meeting. There are 7 speakers registered to speak today. They will be speaking on the 2nd and 4th applications. Speakers will have 3 minutes to put forward their views. There will be a reminder given by the clerk when 30 seconds remain. At the end of the 3 minutes, members of the committee will have an opportunity to ask the speaker questions, if necessary, to clarify any points they have made. After the speaker has addressed the committee and answered any questions, then they will be allowed to remain in the meeting, but they will not be allowed to participate further from this point. The Chair will open up the meeting for questions to officers, a debate by the committee, and finally, determination on the application by a vote. The votes will be taken by roll call. Finally, members, this meeting is being live streamed and a recording will be placed on the Council's website. Please note that others may choose to copy this recording. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Let's move on to the first application. Application for the construction of 2 dwellings, resubmission of application 22/01124/FL. Amended plans, additional information at 24 Longedge Lane, Wingworth. In line with our normal practices, I'm going to ask the planning officers to tell us about late comments and to give a brief presentation showing any photos and plans of the site. I will allow the officers to complete the presentation. Consequently, members, unless you have any point of order that you feel cannot wait, could you please reserve these or any questions about the process until the end? That's the plan. Sorry. Yeah, and I believe we're handing over to you now, Graham.
Thanks, Chair. I'm Graham Cooper, Planning Officer for the Council, for anybody who's not met me yet. So I'm going to go through the first 2 items. So this first item is that this is a full application, as Chair has just pointed out, for the construction of 2 dwellings in the grounds of 124 Longedge Lane at Wingworth. A single late representation has been received from Wingworth Parish Council Now, these comments can be read in full in the late reps report that have been provided to members before the meeting. So the main issues for this application are the impact on the proposed development on the character and appearance of the street scene, the heritage impacts, impacts on neighbours, and highway safety. And there are no statutory consultees who have identified any technical reasons as to why the application should be refused. So this first slide illustrates the application site shaded in orange. The site is set within the settlement development limit of Wingworth, and this is in a residential setting. Longedge Lane fronts the application site to the south and east, and you've got Lodge Drive, which extends east down the hill, and you've got Honlope Park School that you can just see to the east of the application site. And also you've got the All Saints Church to the southeast, and that is a listed building. So this is a location plan of the site submitted with the application. You can see the site edged in red. You can see the relationship with the neighbouring properties. You've got number 122 Longedge Lane to the north, and you've got number 126 Longedge Lane to the west. Both of these properties are two-storey in nature. Opposite the site to the east, we've got a pair of semi-detached properties, and we've also got some detached bungalows further along Longedge Lane to the northeast. So the churchyard sits to the south of the application site, and the church is probably about 75 metres away to the southeast. So this next slide, this shows the proposed site layout. You've got plot 1, which will sit to the west of number 124 Millfield on Longedge Lane. And this will have a new access created onto Longedge Lane as well, as you can see on the plans. The existing access into the application site will be closed up and a new access created, which will be shared between the existing dwelling and plot 2 to the north. The plan illustrates the original dwelling's garden divided into 3. All of these gardens will meet the minimum private garden sizes set out in the council's successful places SPD, with the smallest garden being approximately 140 square metres. So this next slide illustrates the proposed house type, but this is the proposed floor plan and elevations. Each dwelling will have 3 bedrooms. Now this is a levels plan which has been submitted by the applicant to try and help us understand the levels comparison between the application site, the proposed dwelling, and the neighbouring dwellings. So that top drawing that you can see illustrates plot 1 in the centre, with existing dwelling on the right-hand side and number 126 on the left. The bottom drawing illustrates plot 2, again in the centre, with existing dwelling 124 on the left and number 122 on the right. The proposed ridge heights will sit between the existing built form on Longedge Lane quite comfortably, as you can see from the diagram. So yesterday I shared with members a full suite of photographs taken from sites. The next few are just a selection of those that are key to the decision. So this first one is taken from the entrance of the churchyard, looking back towards the application site. The existing dwelling can be seen behind the big tree there that is still there on site today. Number 122 can be seen on the right-hand side, and number 126 on the left down the hill. So this next photo is just a closer-up view of the application site, the existing dwelling that's there on the site. So this next photo is a closer-up view of the 126, which sits to the west of the application site. The garage you can see in the photo will be removed from site if permission is granted. And that will be to accommodate plot 1 that's proposed. So this final photo shows the relationship between the existing property on site and number 122 on the right hand side there. And plot 2 will sit between the 2 properties. And that concludes the presentation, Chair.
Thank you. Right, colleagues, we have no speakers on this application. We will move straight to questions to the officers. Again, I would like to keep this part of the proceedings focused on getting clarity about any points you are not sure of. Once we have done this, we can then have our discussion about the application based on all that we have heard and read. I would be grateful if you could not move any motions at this stage. Let's wait until we have all had a chance to make our assessment. So I'll open the floor for questions to officers. No questions for officers? Right, I'll thank you. This leads us to the final part of the process, our discussion about what we have heard, what we think and what we want to decide. Before going any further, I would just like the clerk to remind us about motions.
Thank you, Chair. Please bear in mind, members, that a motion must be moved and seconded before a vote is taken. If an amendment to a motion is moved and seconded, then that amendment will be voted on first. If a motion is to be moved which goes against officers' recommendations, then the member who has moved the motion must give the reasons for doing so. The reason for moving a motion against officer recommendations should comprise the relevant planning issues and be supported by evidence as necessary. If a motion to reject officer recommendations falls, or in other words, it is not passed, that doesn't mean that the recommendations are automatically approved. Rather, you will need to take a positive decision through a further motion in favour of the recommendations or a different course of action. This will need to be approved by the committee through another vote. In terms of the timing of the motions, these should be moved and seconded after the committee has heard and read and discussed the evidence before it. The Chair will indicate when this point has been reached. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Right, I'll open the floor for debate. Okay. David?
Thanks, Chair. I mean, my concerns with this is how close they are to the adjoining premises. Plot 1 particularly is very, very close to the property at 126. And I think it needs to go back. I mean, it's kind of like the existing property has protected itself by keeping a significant amount, and it has literally planked these right pretty much up to the boundaries for the neighbouring properties. So I think it needs revisiting on that basis alone. I think there is significant loss of amenities to the two neighbours on either side. I noticed they've improved the windows, which is good because that was another concern. But I'm just not comfortable with the plots and how close they are to the neighbours at 126 and 122.
Anybody else? Peter?
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure I'm in agreement with removing a garage to put a plot up. I mean, you're looking at, yeah, it is quite a large lump, but it's bang on a junction. I'm not entirely sure how the new accesses are going to work. And I'm with David. I think they're going to be too overbearing on the street, seeing the density and massing, as they've said in Wingworth's neighbourhood plan.
Thank you. Stuart?
It's a question for Graham, really. In terms of waiting, obviously hearing what Councillor Hancock, Councillor Elliott has just said in terms of waiting, what would that have if this was refused today? What would that impact would those comments have if we refused it and it went to appeal?
In terms of waiting, can you just sorry, expand?
As in the material weight those concerns would have if it was sent back.
So yeah, obviously the material considerations are those laid out in the local plan and the Wingworth neighbourhood plan. In officer's opinion, the proposed development for 2 detached dwellings fits within that. It's a very mixed street scene. You know, the neighbouring property has a projecting gable. It has numerous different sizes of openings. The proposed dwellings kind of, in our opinion, fit in with the character of the area. So, you know, if members are minded to refuse the application, you know, our view is that, you know, that would be difficult to defend for the council.
Thank you, Chair.
Is everyone done on the debate? Right. Have we got any motions? Having heard everything to date, the officer recommendations before us, what is the view of the committee on the application? I am now opening the floor to motions. David.
I'm going to move that we reject officers' recommendations based on the fact that it doesn't comply with Wingworth's neighbourhood plan under policy W1 for the distribution, and also on W4 that it doesn't really meet the mix of housing that's needed either.
Right, members, we have a motion. Before we move to the vote.
Sorry, Chair, no one has seconded the motion
Oh,
as yet.
sorry. I'll be a seconder of that motion. No. Well, I will move that we accept officers' recommendations on this and grant the permission as laid out in the report. Thank you. Right, can we take a vote on that, please?
So the motion, Chair, then is to approve officers' recommendations as set out in the report. Councillor Cheetham.
For.
Councillor Cooper. Councillor Elliott. Councillor Fawcett.
For.
Councillor Foster.
For.
Councillor Gurr.
For.
Councillor Hancock.
Against.
Councillor Hartshorn.
For.
Councillor Lacey.
For.
Councillor Liggett.
For.
And Councillor Rouse.
For.
That's 9 for the motion and 2 against. The motion has passed, Chair.
Thank you. Right, we'll now move on to the second application. Item 5 on the agenda, NED /23//00025/FL Claycross. Comments and give a brief presentation showing any photos and plans of the site. I will allow the officers to complete their presentation. Consequently, members, unless you have any point of order that you feel cannot wait, could you please reserve these or any questions about the process until the end? Right, I believe you're leading this one again, Graham. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. So as Chair has just pointed out, this proposal is for a change of use of agricultural land to form a glamping site and 6 touring caravan pitches off Mill Lane at Homegate. Chair, a number of late reps have been received, which again have been reported to members prior to the meeting, but I've just got a couple of points of important matters I just need to point out to Chair and members of the committee. So first of all, we've updated the title in agreement with the applicant, just to include the reference to the six pitches for touring caravans. And at 1.1 and 4.9 of the officer report to members, the call-in reason and comments of the local ward member were incorrect and have been just transferred through from a different planning application. So apologies for that mistake. Just in order to clarify the exact ward member comments and call-in reason, members will find the updated sections of the officer report to members in the late reps pack. Also, in the interest of completeness, I've offered to read out Councillor Coupett's original objection letter. So if it's all right, if I just read that out. So these are member Councillor Coupett's comments from February earlier this year. So primarily her concerns are similar to the recent planning refusal further down Mill Lane on a different site. I'm concerned that this application would be an intrusion into what is currently open countryside and beyond the settlement development limit of Homegate. I'm concerned that the proposals do not mitigate the harmful urbanizing impact this development could have on what is currently a visually rural area. In addition, given the rural and narrow nature of the roads in this area, I'm concerned about the highway's impacts of the increased traffic in this area, particularly given the proposed pitches, as well as the potential parking issues from the number of vehicles generated. Finally, I understand nearby residents are concerned by the potential amenity issues of this proposal in terms of noise and other disturbance. I therefore object to this application, and given the concerns regarding the impact it would have on the landscape and surrounding infrastructure, if it is not mandatory for refusal under delegated powers by officers, I would request that the application is considered and determined by planning committee. So that's what Councillor Cooper had to say, and apologies for not including that in the report. So hopefully that's just put that to one side. So in addition to this update, officers are proposing that if members are minded to grant permission today, that the new and revised conditions set out in the late representations pack are also considered by members. These conditions seek to restrict the use of the site, the structures, seek to prevent static caravans from being placed on the site, and ensure no touring caravans are kept on the site during the winter months. The main issues for the application are set out in the officer report and considered to be the principle of development for visitor accommodation, the impact on the proposed development on the landscape character, the heritage impact on nearby listed buildings, the impact on neighbouring residents' amenity, and highway safety. And again, we've got no statutory consultees who have identified any technical reason as to why the application should be refused. So I'll now move on to the slides. So this slide is the site shaded in orange. The application site is set in open countryside, which is designated in the local plan as a secondary area of multiple environmental sensitivity. The settlement development limit for Tupton sits on the opposite side of Mill Lane to the east, and the river runs from west to east between the application site and the allotments that you can see just to the north. Henmore Cottage is a Grade 2 listed building and is located to the south at the junction of Mill Lane and Homegate Road. And also you can see a public right of way which extends from north to south, approximately 80 metres northwest of the application site. So this is the submitted location plan with the site edged in red, with all the other land under the applicant's ownership in blue. So this plan illustrates the proposed site layout with the access taken from Mill Lane in the southeast corner. As you can see, a reception and toilet block will sit flanking a car park. Moving west across the site, we've got 6 caravan pitches, followed by 3 pods. And then there's a green gap, and there's a communal cabin, and then a further 3 pods at the back of the site. So this is just a bit more of a zoomed in view of the site. You see on the left, development including the car park, the toilet block, and the reception around that site entrance. The central part of the scheme can be seen on the bottom right, and the rear extent of the scheme can be seen in the top right of this slide. So this is a more detailed plan of the site entrance, which illustrates the access onto Mill Lane. It illustrates the parking of vehicles on an area formed of grasscrete. We've got the toilet block reception building to the west of the parking area, and the grasscrete driveway extends into the application site. And that only serves the touring pitches and the first 3 pods. It doesn't go any further into the site. So these next few plans are just elevation and floor plans. Hopefully you can just make them out. So this is the reception building and some of the pods that are proposed. Timber cladding is proposed for these buildings. And again, this is the proposed floor and elevation details of some more of the glamping pods. So this is the shower block unit. Again, timber clad will be used on this building, and it's single story. So this is the grill cabin, which is the communal cabin set towards the rear of the site. So this is elevational details for the cabin units to the rear of the site, Just for clarity, the sauna details that are referred to, I believe, have been removed from this proposal. So next few slides, just a quick few slides from the site visits from yesterday. So this is the view from Mill Lane looking back into the application site. You can just see the allotments that are there on the right-hand side. The existing hedgerow and landscaping on the left, or that left edge of the site, will be retained. Another view from Mill Lane, application site on the right. You've got some residential properties which back onto Mill Lane on the left-hand side. And so this final photo is taken from the public right-of-way. This is to the north of the application site, and the arrow is to just try and indicate roughly where the proposed development will extend along that tree line. And that concludes the presentation, Chair.
Thank you. Right, colleagues, we have 4 speakers on the application. The first whom will be Trevor Watson, an objector. They will have 3 minutes to get their point, to get over their points. They will be informed when 30 seconds remain. As members, you can ask them to clarify any matters that they have raised. But remember, your questions should only relate to the points which they have already made. So can I invite Mr. Watson up to the table, please? Just for information, you just press the little button on the microphone to speak.
I have done.
Right,
Thank you.
You've got 3 minutes, Mr. Watson. Thank you.
Good day to you all. My name's Trevor Watson. My wife and I live in one of 6 properties on Mill Lane, opposite Bateman's Mill pub. We and our neighbours have several serious concerns about the proposal. The proposal fails to give any idea about the number of visitors at any one time and the number of weeks or months per year that the site will be in operation. If in operation all year round, the proposal effectively seeks permission for housing in open countryside, which will be subject to much more stringent planning laws. Previous applications near this site for development have been refused by the council and by inspectors on appeal, noting that the proposals would result in a prominent intrusion into the open countryside and would erode the separation between built-up settlement edge and the open countryside. The same applies with this application. With 6 pods and 6 parking spots for caravans and motorhomes, there could be 30 to 40 visitors each and every week. This gives much cause for concern at the likelihood of noise and disturbance in what is at present a calm and tranquil area in open countryside at all times of day and night. The proposal states the site will be far from any settlement and the road, which is clearly not correct. Sound carries very readily across open land. The pods furthest from the site entrance are closer to our settlement than they are to the reception building. The public footpath mentioned twice in the report, with encouragement to utilise it to reach the local pub and other amenities, runs directly past our and our neighbours' properties. The boundary of the footpath is also the boundary of our house and garden. We have genuine concern about our safety and security and the potential for considerable disturbance and noise from many revellers using this route at all hours. At present, it's not a busy footpath. It's used by local dog walkers as in fact calm and peaceful. There are a number of conditions in the planning officer's report which would appear to be unenforceable. For instance, no barbecues outside the designated block, no fires, no noise outside of specified hours, 24-hour on-site management presence. If the assumption of the planning team is that all the stated conditions must be met in order for the proposal to be approved, if some conditions are unenforceable, then surely the application cannot be approved. Thank you for allowing me to speak to you all today. I appreciate your due consideration of the points I've made.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. Have any members got any questions for Mr. Watson on what is? No, thank you. The next speaker is Mr. Thomas.
Thank you, everyone. My wife and I are the owners of Henmore Cottage, the Grade 2 listed asset dating from 1699 that's most directly impacted by the proposed development. We contend there are 3 errors of fact and policy in the officer's report to this committee. First, the report takes a narrow and restricted understanding of the phrase "the setting of a listed building." There is a Court of Appeal decision from 2016 which makes it quite clear this is not an issue of physical proximity. That decision overturned planning permission for housing development 1.5 kilometres to the south of a listed building. Justice Lang quashed the decision on the grounds that the inspector had adopted an unlawfully narrow approach to the question of the setting of a listed building by focusing on finding a visual connection between the two. The court found that under the National Policy Planning Framework, the surroundings in which a heritage asset are experienced is not limited by the sense of sight. The surroundings of a listed building includes its physical surroundings and the wider experience of the heritage asset in its physical location. Historic England draws attention to both noise and tranquility as aspects of the setting of a listed building. We have a report from the Planning Inspectorate in 2020 in connection with an adjacent development. I quote from John Williamson, the planning inspector, quote, "I consider the surroundings within which Henmore Cottage is experienced include the section of Mill Lane that passes by the site to join Homegate Road and the land either side of it. A significant part of the listed building setting is the appeal site and the adjoining open countryside to the west, which the site forms part of. I consider this forms part of the listed building's setting and contributes substantially to the significance of the listed building," close quote. So our first contention is on the basis of case law and the Planning Inspectorate's prior decision. The report gives an incorrect assessment of the impact of this development on a listed building. Secondly, the officer's report contains a material error of fact. It refers to the use of an existing adjacent palisade fence to screen the proposed development. This fence was erected as part of an unauthorised development and is currently subject to enforcement action by this very council.
30 seconds remain.
It is procedurally improper to take into account this unauthorised development to further to damage the setting of a listed building. Finally, the Highways report ignores a substantial material fact, namely that in the last decade, Henmore Cottage has been struck twice by vehicles travelling along Mill Lane. As part of its statutory duty to protect a listed building, the council is obliged to mitigate this risk and not to permit developments that exacerbate the risk by encouraging further traffic of large vehicles.
That's time, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Do any colleagues have any questions for Mr. Thomas? No, right, we'll move on to the next speaker, Laura Hoggard, the applicant.
Hello.
3 minutes when you're ready.
Okay. Dear Planning Committee members, my name is Laura Hoggard. I have lived in the community all my life and my family have worked and farmed this land for more than half a century. I have always enjoyed going down to the field and helping with the cows and spending time watching my dad on the tractor. This means a lot to me to keep in the family, for my children to enjoy the same experiences I did. We have conducted extensive research on different options and we believe that a glamping site with the most sustainable farming diversification by maintaining the landscape and bringing numerous benefits not only to the local economy, but to residents and visitors alike. As many of you may know, glamping, a fusion of glamour and camping, has gained immense popularity in recent years, becoming a thriving tourism trend around the world. Glamping offers unique and high-quality camping experience that combines the joys of being surrounded by nature with the comfort and elegance of upscale accommodations. Firstly, a glamping site would attract a diverse range of tourists, from families to couples, encouraging them to explore our community and surrounding areas. However, the site being small will attract a variety of visitors that will undoubtedly stimulate local businesses such as restaurants, shops and recreational facilities, resulting in increased revenues and job opportunities for our residents. Moreover, a glamping site aligns perfectly with our commitment to environmental sustainability. By offering cabins equipped with eco-friendly features, we can provide a unique experience for visitors seeking to connect with nature while minimising their environmental impact. This initiative will also present an opportunity to educate visitors about sustainable practices, further promoting ecological consciousness within our community. In order to ensure a successful glamping site, we'll still be farming the remaining land with grazing of cattle and planting of wildflowers. We aim to introduce more wildlife and it's landscaping the site by adding natural screening to protect the privacy of guests and enhancing the visual impact from all aspects. We will prioritise eco-friendly construction materials and energy-efficient systems. To address concerns about potential noise or disturbance, we pledge to implement strict noise control measures and curfews. Our priority is to create an atmosphere that allows guests to peacefully enjoy their surroundings while respecting the tranquility of our community. We understand that the development proposal raises questions and concerns. However, we are committed to an open dialogue with all members of our community. We firmly believe that transparency and effective communication are key to reaching a positive outcome for everyone involved. In conclusion,
30 seconds remain.
In conclusion, the establishment of a glamping site within our community presents an exciting opportunity for growth, ecotourism and economic stimulation. By embracing this trend, we can showcase our region's natural beauty while providing unique experience for visitors. We kindly request your careful consideration of our proposal and believe that together we can create a glamping site that positively impacts our community for generations to come. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you. Do any colleagues have any questions? Okay, Councillor Leggett.
Yeah, I just wondered how you intend policing the noise issues.
We're going to put curfews on and there'll be on the terms and conditions when people come, there'll be like no noise after 11 o'clock, like most glamping sites.
So the policing will literally just be a notice.
Terms and conditions, yes.
Right.
And if they do break that and we get informed, then they'll be asked to leave probably.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Councillor Fawcett.
Thank you, Chair. Ms Hogarth, thank you very much for your contribution there. My question really is that more on the agricultural side, I think it's well established that farmers and the farming industry is really struggling. There's a lot of challenges. You mentioned the word diversification quite clearly there, and that must be quite a serious consideration, given the fact that the ownership of the land has been in your family for quite some time. I note on there, on the application, is everything okay, Councillor Foster? If we can carry on. Okay, so Ms Hurd, the grade of the land is obviously something you would have taken into consideration, I imagine. So that from your the way you've assessed it, this glamping site is going to enable you to keep farming the land more efficiently, because you mentioned there that you can graze the cattle on it still. I know the lower part is subject to some issues with flooding, but the part you've applied to isn't necessarily. Can you just give us an insight really on what that means, still being able to farm it, and how you came to the decision to diversify?
Okay, so I don't know if on the diagram you saw how much of the field is owned. We also own 2 other fields on the plans as well. So my dad still brings the cows down and we'll have it fenced off so the cows can still come as far down as possible to the glamping site. And when we've been visiting other glamping sites, they love to see the cattle in the field. And my dad will still graze the land and mow it for the cattle during the winter.
But there's nothing else agriculturally you could do to get a better yield off the land.
Pardon, sorry?
There's nothing else in terms of agriculture that you could do to get a better return off the land. Essentially, is this going to help you run a more viable farming enterprise?
Yeah, we've looked at many options, and this is the only one that will actually generate enough money to be able to keep the land, and that's what we want to do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No more questions. Thank you very much. Last speaker is Andrew Holmes, also the applicant.
Well, I don't have a speech because Laura's covered quite a lot. But I would like to take this opportunity just to address a couple of things. There's a gentleman what's always just commented about some palisade fencing. That is not our property, what that has happened to. So I'd like you to consider that. And then the other thing is, just following on from the agricultural side, the shape of the field makes it inefficient to run the tractors when we're growing crops, because you get wastage, because as you if you refer back to the picture, the outline of the land wiggles. And obviously when you're running farm machinery, you want it as straight as possible. So for yields and things like that, it obviously restricts what you can get off of there, which obviously if we could still graze cattle on there, we could still bale for silage on there. But when you're talking crops, it's not as easy. And that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the speaker? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Colleagues, we will now move, we now have the opportunity to put questions to officers about the application. Anybody got any questions for officers? Councillor Liggett.
Just a question about something about fencing and enforcement. I wonder what that was to do with.
Right, if you look in the presentation pack at, give me a second. On page 46 of the presentation, figure 4 shows the proposed site plan. So if you just imagine you stood at the site entrance looking into the site, the palisade fencing surrounds a site neighbouring this application. So it's on a separate third-party land. It is under investigation by the enforcement team. I've not had an update as to where we are with that at the moment. But I think the main consideration for us as officers is that, you know, the photos that we've shown are during the winter months, and they were taken from directly in front of the neighbouring site. And when you stand there today, looking up the site, the hedgerow along that western boundary is much more dense in its appearance, and there are a number of trees. And I think what we're trying to say as officers is that, on balance, the proposed development set against that mature hedge and trees would have an acceptable impact on the landscape character. So yeah, so with regards to palisade fencing, that is being looked into, and it is outside the application site. But I think for reference, it is worth, you know, a fence could be erected up to 2 meters on that site. So that's perhaps just something to weigh into the mix as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions for officers? Nope. Thank you for that. Right, I'd now like to open the floor for debate of Councillor Hancock.
Thanks, Chair. I think this is probably, out of all of them, this is the one I've struggled with most, because in principle, I think I like the idea, I like the design of it, but I think it's just the wrong place. And I think we're setting a dangerous precedent to put something like this outside the settlement gap. And I know we're kind of clutching at policy to say, well, we can squeeze it in here, but it does feel like we're very much trying to squeeze it in rather than being a legitimate argument for putting it there. So I've not heard anything that makes me think otherwise, if I'm truthful. So yeah, I think it's a nice idea. I like it, but I can't support it on where it is.
Thank you. Councillor Liggett.
Yeah, a little bit like Councillor Hancock, much the same actually. And I'm also a little bit perturbed about the idea of caravans on a glamping site, because I can see they've tried to blend everything in with the countryside, with the green roofs and the wooden cladding, but then to stick 6 caravan pictures on the front seems a bit strange to me. But that's my opinion. Thank you.
Councillor Fawcett.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, Councillor, I get that concern. Sorry, I get that concern. Understand that. Has there been, I'm just trying to find it here, was there a reference to a restriction on those caravans, Graham? I'm just trying to find the page where that was. I mean, sort of figuratively speaking, if they weren't there, would that change the material weighting of this whole application?
So yeah, so what we've tried to do as officers is just clarify the position of how long we'd like the pods used and the caravans used. So on page, right, it's point 3 of the late reps report, we've got a revised condition about the surface water drainage, and we've also got a couple of extra conditions 3 extra conditions which just seek to, no touring caravan should be occupied on any of the 6 touring caravan pitches that form part of the developments for a period of no more than 28 days. So that restricts the number of days that they can use those pitches, and also that we'd have no caravan pitches between the 1st of November and 31st of March, and that no caravan shall be stored on site at any time. So we have tried to restrict that, and we've also tried to restrict the use and occupation of the pods as well to 28 days. Just try and tighten that up.
Okay. Just out of interest, Councillor Leggo, how do you feel about that, the restriction of it?
Well, it's not really any different, is it? Apart from there being nobody on there in the winter.
Right. Oh, so is your concern in the comings and goings, essentially?
Yeah, and what it looks like during the summer months when more people are about walking, actually.
Right.
I know that, I realise the hedges will be grown in the summer, but you're still going to caravans. Well, 99.9% caravans are white, aren't they? So they do stick out rather.
Okay. Jerry, if I can just add something on there. This is obviously, I think the first concern may be that this is obviously development on what is a green field. But if I'm not correct, it isn't green belt necessarily.
That's correct. Yeah,
It's
it's
not-
open
we're not-
countryside,
But
but
it's not developing on the green belt, essentially. So
No,
in terms of factual points there, it's not green belt development.
no, it's a green field.
Green,
But
yeah.
it's a secondary area of environmental sensitivity. So as it is of some landscape value.
The way my consideration of this application was that, crikey, we're building on a green field, we can't keep doing this. But then I actually think about the impact on family farmers, and this is clearly a family farm looking to diversify and make their farm enterprise viable, which is becoming even more difficult in current circumstances. We've heard from the applicant, we've heard from objectors today, and it looks to me that every possible effort has been made to mitigate those concerns. And for that reason, if it is going to enable farming within our district, I will be minded to support it with those recommendations.
All right, thank you. Right, colleagues, having heard everything today and the officer's recommendations before us, what is the view of the committee on the application? I am now opening the floor to motions.
I move that we accept this application with officers' recommendations.
That with officers' recommendations.
Sorry, to accept officer recommendations. So if we can take that to a vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Cheetham,
For.
Councillor Cooper, Councillor Elliott, Councillor Fawcett,
For.
Councillor Foster,
Against.
Councillor Gurr,
For.
Councillor Hancock,
Against.
Councillor Hartshorn,
For.
Councillor Lacey,
For.
Councillor Liggett,
Against.
Councillor Rouse, that's 8 for the motion and 3 against. The motion has passed, Chair.
Thank you. Right, we now move on to the third application, item 6 on the agenda. Application NED 22-0/1-036/OL Drumfield. Thank you. Oh, sorry. If you would like to leave, you're more than welcome to depart now. Every speaker on that. In line with normal practices, I'm going to ask the planning officers to tell us about any late comments and give a brief presentation showing any photos and plans of the site. I will allow the officers to complete the presentation. Again, members, unless you have a point of order that you feel cannot wait, can you please reserve these or any questions about the process until the end? Thank you. I believe Phil's speaking on this one.
Thank you, Chair. There's no late reps. This is an outline application for the demolition of existing buildings and the erection of a food store. Matters of appearance and landscape are now reserved for further approval, with issues of access, layout and scale to be determined at this stage. The application site is in the centre of the screen and lies within the settlement development limits for Dronfield and is a principal employment area. The town centre lies to the south, and to the west the site backs onto the tree belt and the Dronfield bypass. Opposite the site are employment units and the scout hut. This extract shows the employment area in purple and the town centre hatched in blue to the south. As set out in the report, the development of the site for a retail store is contrary to policy WC2. However, the benefits in terms of providing additional retail capacity arising from existing stores overtrading in Dronfield is considered sufficient to justify the loss of employment land on this site, when coupled with the fact that the overall levels of employment land across the district remains well in excess of the level required to deliver the employment strategy set out in the plan. This is a red line plan showing the two existing buildings to be demolished. These have been vacant for about 2 years. This shows the layout, which proposes an improved access in the southeast corner, serving both the store and the adjacent Amatec site. The building will be to the rear of the site with car parking to the front. 100 spaces are proposed, and the existing tree screening into the boundaries would largely be retained. This shows details of proposed access. The required visibility can be achieved, and new footways and pedestrian crossing are proposed to encourage link trips to the town centre. Proposals also include access into the Amatec car park to the south and to the rear car park. This is a 3D visual of the building. This shows it set to the rear of the site, with the new access arrangements and car parking in front. The site is elevated above the road, however, well screened by existing trees. This aerial view of the application site at the top of the screen. The roundabout serving Sainsbury's is at the bottom of the picture. Highways have confirmed that the development will not have an adverse impact on the capacity of this junction. And Sainsbury's and its car park are shown to the right of the roundabout. This is a photo looking north towards the existing access. To the left is the Amatec offices and car park. Photograph opposite the site access, which will be widened and improved to provide entrance and exit for the store. This photo showing the Amatec entrance and the existing site entrance. It's a photo. This is a photo looking south towards the site entrance from the Ponsford industrial unit, and it's the approximate location of the pedestrian crossing. The footpath will be extended on the opposite side of the road. And this is a photo taken from the scout hut entrance looking back towards the application site on the opposite side of the road. That's it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. As there are no speakers for this application, we will move straight to questions to officers. Again, I would like to keep this part of the proceedings focused on getting clarity about any points you are not sure of. So I would be grateful if you would not move any motions at this stage. Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Chair. Mine's a question, but it's got a very short preamble, something I've discussed with Mr. Slater already, and with Bridget Gold at Highways today. It's regarding figure 3, which I think that's on page 71. Committee members will be able to see there's a proposed pedestrian crossing there, which is part of the section 278 agreement. That's the works that the developer will do in conjunction with Highways. Now, it says there that it's just a pedestrian crossing. So I'm looking for some clarity from officers whether we can put down, whether this committee can put down as a condition the type of the actual pedestrian crossing. Now, my concern is because Reeks Lane itself, there's only, as other councillors may know here, Councillor Cheetham may know this, we've got pathways on both sides, but as you get further down Reeks Lane, there's only pathway on one side, and the average speed in this on this 30-mile-an-hour road is quite high. We know that from experience and from living there. So it's on the high side, the average speed. Now, discussing this with Bridget Gold, and it is a question, Chair, but just to make the committee aware first, discussing this with Bridget Gold, she's made it clear that zebras are only good for slow-moving traffic, much like we've got on Dronfield Bottom. What would be more appropriate on here is either a pelican or, because of the Scouter opposite, a puffin crossing. So a pelican, one with the lights where you press the button, for clarity. So my question is, looking at how much they cost, given that Lidl, which is likely to be the owner of this, are looking at putting this crossing in. A zebra at the minute to the county costs about 40k to install. Now, a pelican costs 90 to 95. Those are the figures. My concern is this left alone, this 278 as it is, a developer will likely err on the cheaper side. That's my concern. And what's really needed here. Now, the reason for the question is this question went to Highways Development Control. It didn't go past Development Control to Bridget Gold, who would normally comment on it. She said she hadn't heard of this. If so, her comments were this: it's not appropriate on this type of road, and a zebra is fine for slow-moving traffic. And the very last thing I'd finish on, and thanks for this, Chair, for letting me have some preamble on this. A previous one was funded by Lidl in Shirebrook on Portland Road. So there, Lidl paid for one for a pelican crossing. Now, my question is, are we able to put this in a condition? Can this committee today put this in a condition, the type, rather than just leave it down as crossing? So the question is, can we put here today as a condition that it's a pelican crossing or a puffin crossing? Thank you, Chair.
We can certainly put on a condition that requires details of the pedestrian crossing to be submitted and approved in writing by the local planning authority. I take your point about Lidl, but Lidl aren't actually the applicants for this, so can't comment on whether they would be able to pay or not. So we can certainly put a condition on requiring the details to be approved. If committee are adamant that they want the particular type of crossing, then yes, we can put that condition on as well. But like I say, at this stage, Lidl aren't actually the applicants.
If I can come back on that, Chair.
Okay.
They're obviously not the applicants like they weren't on Portland Road. Lidl wouldn't be the applicants, neither would Tesco, neither would Aldi, but they will be the one that's taking this on. So if the answer is yes, we can put that condition on. I'd ask the committee to be minded that that be a condition on this. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Fawcett.
Just to clarify, because you've obviously got some experience on this, Councillor Foster, what would be the name of the crossing that you just mentioned there that would be?
Either a pelican,
Yep.
or a puffin.
Gotcha.
A puffin's got, I believe, the difference between a pelican and a puffin. There's a very slight difference. No joke. There's a very slight difference, and it's all about it being detectable for younger children.
Yeah.
The definition's online, but
Yeah.
the main thing, it would be lights. It would involve lights, and that's either a pelican or a puffin, and it would be applicable in a place like this. My worry is when you're looking at, to answer your question, when you're looking at a company like Lidl, and it will be Lidl, we understand they will be here. They've got a turnover, I think it was 7.8 billion last year. They can afford this, whereas the county council, you know, they don't have as much money. It's taxpayers' money. They should be maybe pay this as part of a section 278. We're able to do it, and that's what I asked the committee to consider. It will be a concern in years to come in Dronfield. Thank you.
Chair, I'd be minded to support that if we can have that as a recommendation.
Yeah, when we get to
Yeah.
that part.
If I could just be clear, Chair, so it would be the puffin or the pelican as specified in the condition.
Yes, I think that.
We'll revert to Councillor Foster's
Yeah.
knowledge of birds.
Yep.
Right. Thank you to the officers for that. This leads us to the final part of the process, our discussion about what we've heard and what we think and what we want to decide. I would now like to open the floor for debate. Councillor Foster?
Yeah, just commenting on general, my concern is when we look at policy, we use an employment land for retail. And we're justifying it by using saying that existing companies are overtrading. Now that would be the only two big supermarkets we've got in Dronfield are Sainsbury's and Aldi. And I just want the committee to be minded that this overtrading, you've got to be careful because we don't have the figures for this. These are the figures that are being provided by the developers. So it is a concern for me, this, especially when I'm looking just a few years ago, I had permission from Aldi to take a petition on their door. And as part of that petition, and this is quite well known in Councillor Cheetham might want to comment on this. If you go to Aldi and you don't always find Dronfield residents there. The petition I took, half, I think it was 49 and 51%, half came from Sheffield. So half of the people that shop at Aldi, and this was about 5 years back, this petition, about half the people, and I took about 300 names on the over a weekend, half of them came. Now, the reason why I'm mentioning it, that half came from Sheffield, we're likely to see this at Lidl as well. So it's not a question of overtrading, it's that people will come from Sheffield, they'll use Green Lane and they'll use Beauchamp, and traffic will increase and they'll use that junction. It's not necessarily for Dronfield residents. That doesn't mean it's a bad thing, but we've got to be minded of that when we think about traffic and we think about where these people will come from. They'll be coming from a different county to shop in North East Derbyshire. We've got to be minded that that's, I believe, what will happen. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Cheetham?
I take Councillor Foster's points there, and someone was old enough to remember when the Sainsbury's was built, and you could argue that it put Summerfield Stroke the Co-op at the Civic Centre out of business. So it's difficult for me to give an objective forecast of whether what impact it will have, if any, on the existing Aldi and Sainsbury's. However, I do understand that the business unit is empty at the moment. It does seem as good a place as any to put a relatively small supermarket. Yeah, it probably will attract shoppers from over the border in Sheffield, but I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing that attracts business into the town. And obviously got to remember there's business going the other way as well, because people are shopping at St James's at Meadowhead now as well. So I'm sort of minded to support the application on balance.
Thank you. Any other? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, just to pick up on the point about the pedestrian crossing issue, and just for clarification, because at the moment the recommendation doesn't have the caveat that the details of conditions being delegated back to the planning manager for development management. So just to clarify, when we get to the point of voting on a recommendation, my suggestion would be that the recommendation is that is delegated back so that officers can have the discussion with the applicant about the wording that's being debated. And should they not agree, then we may well have to come back. But if they did agree, that was part of the delegated decision today. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Gay.
Yeah, I'm also very familiar with this area as I live in Marsh Lane, and it is already quite busy with traffic. And I certainly support your point about that being a fast road. I mean, I don't think it matters whether people are coming from Sheffield or Dronfield or wherever, but it does seem like a lot of supermarkets in a small area. We've got the Sainsbury's, possibly this one, and as you say, the Aldi, which really isn't that far away. So I would have concerns about increased traffic in what is already a busy traffic area.
Thank you. Right, no more on that. We'll having heard everything today and officers' recommendations before us. What is the view of the committee on the application? And I am now opening the floor to motions.
I'll move that we accept the officer's recommendations with the addition of Councillor Foster's amendment that we insist on pelican, or what was the other bird crossing? Puffin. That was it, yeah. David Attenborough on the committee. Thank you.
We got a seconder for that, or are we moving it more towards the recommendations as the planning officer about taking it back to? If you can just clarify that.
I think, Chair, like I say, if the recommendation is amended so that the planning manager for development management has delegated powers to have this discussion with the applicant, so that if they are willing to agree to what committee is debated, i.e. include provision for Puffin or Pelican Crossing, then it would be delegated to office to then issue a decision. Should they disagree, we may well have to come back, or it would be coming back.
Right, thanks for clarifying that.
Can I amend my proposal and that we
Yes.
officers mandate officers recommendations with the authority to have the delegated discussion with the developers? That's easy for me to say.
We got a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Rouse. Right, we'll take that to the vote then.
Okay, Chair, I think that's entirely clear. So it's to approve officer recommendations subject to the delegation to actually have the discussion over the Puffin / Pelican Crossing. Councillor Cheetham?
For.
Councillor Cooper? Councillor Elliott? Councillor Fawcett?
For.
Councillor Foster?
Against.
Councillor Gurr?
Against.
Councillor Hancock? For. Councillor Hartshorn?
For.
Councillor Lacey?
For.
Councillor Liggett?
Against.
And Councillor Rouse? That's 7-4. The motion, 3 against and 1 abstained. The motion has passed, Chair.
Thank you. Right, we'll now move on to the fourth application. This is NED/23/00381/FL Brackenfield. In line with normal practices, I'm going to ask the planning officers to tell us about any late comments and give a brief presentation showing any photos and plans of the site. I will allow the officers to complete their presentation. Consequently, members, unless you have a point of order that you feel cannot wait, could you please reserve these or any questions about the process until the end? Right, I believe Kerry's taking this one.
Thanks, Chair. I'm Kerry Hallam, one of the planning officers. This is an application for full planning permission for the conversion and change of use of the building with extensions to form a 2-storey dwelling with roof lights and the provision of a packaged sewage treatment plant. The site is located outside of a settlement development limit and lies in open countryside. The site is also located in an area defined as a primary area of multiple environmental sensitivity. These landscapes are considered to be the most sensitive areas of landscape within North East Derbyshire. The main planning considerations here are whether or not the proposal meets the council's conversion policy, is of an appropriate design, and whether the proposals will cause significant harm to the landscape setting. No statutory consultees have identified any technical reasons as to why this application should be refused.
Just bear with us while we sort out the technical issues.
There we go. The aerial photograph shows the application site highlighted in yellow and the surrounding area. White Car Lane is to the west of the application site. Land surrounding the site is in open countryside, which, as outlined previously, is a sensitive landscape setting. This is just a zoomed in view of the application site. White Car Lane runs north to south through the centre of the image. A small number of residential properties are in the vicinity of the site. This is the site location plan, which shows the extent of the application site outlined in red, including the access onto White Car Lane. The adjoining land in the applicant's ownership is shown outlined in blue. The existing dwelling benefits from two accesses, one to the north, which is included in this application, and one to the south of the existing dwelling. So this shows the existing elevations and floor plans of the building. As can be seen, the building is a simple single-storey, 3-bay garage set over 2 levels. This slide shows the proposed elevations and floor plans of the building. The proposals include extending the building to the west by 2.2 metres, lowering the floor level of the main section of the building by 0.9 metres to be level with the eastern section, raising the ridge and the eaves of the eastern section by 0.9 metres, and extending the front elevation of the eastern element forward by 0.6 metres. The structural survey submitted with the application concludes that a full replacement of the roof structure would also be required. So just some photos. This is from the rear of the building from White Car Lane. The application building is shown there in the middle of the photo, and the applicant's property, Car Barn Farm, is shown on the right. As you can see, the building is set at a lower land level than White Car Lane. This is just a photo of the building from within the site. This is a photo of the site from White Car Lane. 2 parking spaces are proposed just in this section here, and then a visitor space on the gravelled area there. This is a photo from of the photo showing the existing access, the building, the existing dwelling in views towards Ogston Reservoir. And this is a photo from School Lane looking north towards the application site. The outbuilding can be seen there in the middle of the photo. So officers are of the view that the extent of the works would go beyond a conversion, as it would require substantial alterations and extensions, and therefore wouldn't be compliant with local plan policy SS9 or SDC1. Moreover, it is considered that the proposals would result in an unacceptable impact on the rural character of the area, and the proposals would fail to respect, conserve, or enhance the distinctive local landscape area, and therefore the proposals would be contrary to SS1, SS9, SDC3, and SDC12 of the local plan and policies within the Brackenfield neighbourhood plan. All of the technical matters are discussed within the committee report. Accordingly, officers are recommending the application is to be refused. And just a final note that the reference is made within the committee report to SDC1. However, reference to this policy is not included in the reason for refusal. So if members are minded to go with the recommendation, I'd advise that reference to this policy is included within that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Right, colleagues, we have 3 speakers on the application. The first of whom will be Tim Stubbins, the agent. They will have 3 minutes to get over their points. They will be informed when 30 seconds remain. As members, you can ask them to clarify any matters that have been raised, but remember, your questions should only relate to the points which they have already made. Right, Mr. Stubbins.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, committee. My name is Tim Stubbins. I'm a partner with Mitchell Proctor Architects. I've been there a long time, too long than what to tell you, but still. Prior to submitting this application, I did consult with Mr. Graham Cooper in respect of the proposed conversion and in respect to its size and scale, or the size and scale of additions. He did tell me in writing that there is no guidance as to what is modest or significantly larger in the local plan. From experience and going back a long number of years, there used to be a rule of thumb, which was a rule of thumb, I think, talked about 30%. Anyway, we've increased the length of the building by 2 metres, a percentage increase of approximately 25%, which we believe is an acceptable increase in the floor area. Our design does not increase the ridge height of the principal barn building, and only slightly increases the ridge height of the eastern building. We have lowered the floor area to suit our client's need to give a lower ground floor. The alterations I've discussed, and with reference to the photographs that the planning officer has posted, the alterations cannot be seen from any of the roads, and so we can't see why the alterations are proposed form, have visual effect on the rural character of the area. Notwithstanding that, the planning officer in her report says that the conversion with a modest extension may be considered acceptable. The report also says that there aren't any highway objections. The building is structurally sound and fit for conversion, notwithstanding that it does need a new roof, as does every barn conversion. And Derbyshire Wildlife Trust have no objections either. And so we only see the principal reason for your rejection or to refuse it is what is seen to be acceptable or not as a modest extension. This is obviously a matter of opinion.
30 seconds remain.
Right, as there is no guidance. Furthermore, there are many examples where the authorities have approved much larger extensions in the vicinity of the application site. My clients refer to these. So in this respect, we think our proposal is satisfactory. It would have been helpful as an aside if the planning officer during the course of the application—
That's time, Chair.
acquainted us with their issues.
Thank you. Do any members have any questions for the Speaker? Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Chair. I'm asking questions on things you'd mentioned and nothing else, as is the norm. You said there's no guidance. Just to give a fair crack to your applicants and the people you're representing, you said there's no guidance, but when you look at in officers' recommendations, and I'm sure you'll have read them, it's contrary to policies, or it's in the officer's opinion, contrary to policies SS1, the overarching policy, SS9, SDC 3, 12, and then policies of the Brackenfield Neighbourhood Plan, CH1, CH2, H1. So we've got guidance already. That's the guidance we have as a planning committee, and that's what I would follow when I'm looking at officers' recommendations. And that's my guidance. So you say there's no guidance. Have you got any comments at all? Any general comments around that no guidance and what I would consider guidance?
Sorry, can you use your microphone, please?
Pardon, I switched it on. In the guidance we got from Graham, it says categorically that there isn't any guidance as to quantum. And so when you look at, as we're acting for our client, looking at extensions that be put on buildings, all over the district, there seems to be a lack of uniformity in approach, really. The clients have obviously got a purpose for the building which they've described, and they are within eyesight of other barn conversions where, to be honest, far greater extensions have been put on. So that's what I'm trying to get at. Does that answer your question? Thank you.
Thank you. You can take your seat.
Thank you.
Next speaker on this is Michael Poole, the applicant. You have 3 minutes when you're ready. Thank you.
Hello. Yeah. My name is Michael Poole. I'm the applicant. Just to follow on from Tim, we invited Kerry Allen out because we were worried about the harmfulness and the size of the extension, because we lived in Derbyshire all his life. We live at Tibbetts. It's a wonderful place. And we invited Kerry out and we asked her how it would be harmful to the countryside. And during the meeting, we sort of really didn't get an understanding how it would be harmful to the countryside. And I asked her what size extension we could go for, and we couldn't really get an answer to that as far as size and, quantity. So after that, I did a bit of research into this because I drive
from our house into Chesterfield every day, so I see a lot of things going off. I see buildings. I could see how many bricks are going on a building every day because I pass them. And I looked into it, and I looked at a place in just down the road in Milltown where they did a conversion from a barn to a dwelling, and it had a 35% extension on it, and that was passed by the planning committee. And then also our next door neighbours on the same road as us on White Car Lane. It's it's an old farm. There's been certain things going on there, and there's a barn on that particular development, which North East Derbyshire structural engineer says it wasn't capable of converting. And what they've done now, they've built an extension on it, which is around about 65%, and they've demolished it by about 70%. And I mean, I'm thinking, well, if that's not harmful to the countryside, you know, why is ours harmful to the countryside based on 25% floor space? So we're just trying to get his head around that. I mean, and that's from the same local plan as ours, November 2021. And, you know, it's highly visible. It's, you can see it from the roadside as you drive past. Ours is only visible from the north elevation of the rear, and there's only a small extension on it, which is 2 meters. From the front of it, you can't really see it. I know there's a picture on there from School Lane, which is right down the bottom, but you know, you need some good eyesight to see it really, or you know, it's not very visible at all. And I emailed all this information about this development next to us over to Kerry, and I copied Adrian Kirkham, Graham Cooper, and I didn't really get any response till I phoned Kerry, and she said, well, I didn't have anything to do with this application.
30 seconds remain.
And you know, I have no further comments to add to it, so it left us a bit in limbo really to what we could. So when we can see all these things going off, and you know, we couldn't understand why you know, they wouldn't support this application. So I'm just asking you, the councillors, if you would support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Have any members any questions about the points which the speaker has made in their presentation? Nope. Right, we've got one more speaker. This is Mrs. Billie Jean Paul, also the applicant.
Hello, thank you for inviting me today. Excuse me, my voice is a bit weird. Just wanted to say that we're not looking to profiteer from the site at all. It will be a family home, our family home. Excuse me, we have 2 children living with us. We love the area. We want to stay in the area, but because prices and costs have gone up, you know, we're looking to downsize. So we are looking to stay, and it will be our family home. It won't be a holiday let. We're also thinking that actually we will stay there for as long as possible if the plan got passed, but it will be an affordable home for some other family in the area. Currently, there's no development opportunities at all within the Brackenfield area. As my husband said, it can only be seen from the north elevation. Excuse me. So walkers, you know, can see it, but it's actually minor, minimal change. Then in terms of landscaping, that will all be dry stone walled. We'll plant it all with plants. It'll be all the fencing will be all replaced. So it will look absolutely beautiful from the lane with minimal impact. And as we've said, we feel that the 2 meter extension, albeit yes, will go down, but the ridge height won't increase, is modest. We don't feel you can get more modest than a 2 meter extension. Obviously we do need 3 bedrooms because we've got 2 children, so we need to make sure they've got a roof over their head. But I just wanted to express my thoughts that it's not for our profiteering, it's for a family home. Obviously we will sell the property that we currently live in, and there's no issues there from the council either being overlooked or anything like that. Also, we do support the local farmers because we own the, excuse me, the field in front of us and the field at the side of us. And obviously they reap the crops every year, and we give them those crops. So we do support the local area. And that's really all I wanted to say. I'm so sorry about my voice. I've had an operation on my throat, so I can't speak very well, but I just wanted to make sure you knew what it was for and the purpose.
Thank you for that. And do any members have any questions about the points which the speaker has made in the presentation? No. Thank you. You can take your seat. All right, colleagues, you will now have the opportunity to put questions to officers about the application. Again, I would like to keep this part of the proceedings focused on getting clarity about any points you are not sure of. So I would be grateful if you could not move any motions at this stage. Does anybody have any questions for officers? Councillor Hancock.
Thanks, Chair. This is kind of a similar question really to what one of the applicants has just asked, because obviously the guidance is that it's not detrimental to the countryside, and the MPPF is that development of a redundant or disused building enhances its immediate setting. So I'm kind of trying to balance why bringing a redundant building into use in some description without a massive change we're deeming to be detrimental rather than enhancing.
Thank you. I think in terms of the sorry, can you just repeat your question again?
Yeah, why are we, because we right now we've got a redundant building, haven't we? It's not really any use, and it's not an eyesore. It's actually quite a nice building, although it's tired. So I'm trying to determine why in your head doing it up is actually going to be detrimental, rather, because they're not really building anything new, are they? It's not putting something there that doesn't already exist. It is extending it slightly.
Mm-hmm.
So what's actually the thing that in your head is tipping it over to being detrimental rather than enhancing?
So I think the building as it is quite a simple three-bay, a single-story garage as it is. The works, I appreciate the floor space is only increasing by 25%, but the volume of the building is increasing significantly. And when you look at the works that are proposed, yes, it is an extension to the side, but it's also lowering the floor level and then extensions to the eastern element as well. So the volume does increase significantly. It's of a traditional rural building at the moment, and the change would make it harmful to the character of the building and then have an impact on the countryside and landscape as well.
Councillor Bullsett.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, it's similar to what Councillor Hancock has said, but what would have to materially change in this application for it to have a realistic prospect of being approved?
Thank you. The conversion policy does allow for conversions in the countryside, and I did with the agent and the applicant during the application say that I think that something of a more of a straight conversion of the building would be supported by policy, but obviously the policy doesn't allow for major alterations or adaptations to the building, and officers of the view that the extent of the works that they are proposing doesn't comply with that conversion policy. So I think there is scope to do something on the site, but it would be more of a sympathetic conversion of the existing building rather than the works that they are proposing.
Thank you.
No other questions for officers? Thank you for that. This leads us to the final part of the process, our discussion about what we have heard, what we think, and what we want to decide. I would now like to open the floor for debate. Councillor Liggett.
Thank you. Well, I do know this area very well, and I know the property that they've been explaining about further up the road. It was an old derelict farm that's been is being, as we speak, extended, etc. But as far as all the other extensions in that area, I think they were long before the Brackenfield neighbourhood plan and long before the local plan. There's a massive difference between the house they're living in now and the house they're proposing to build. It's extreme downsizing. And I definitely disagree with Mr. Stubbins when he says that it can't be seen from any roads, because it can be seen from 3 roads very easily. It really is in the middle of the open countryside. You can see that building. The only way it's hidden is if you're approaching from the other side of the house that they currently live in, because it's right behind it. But from the bottom road going across to Brackenfield Common, from High Ordish, from White Car Lane, from the footpath, it really is really out in the open. You can see it for miles, actually. And I know we've not got to that stage yet, but personally would like to propose that we follow officers' recommendations for all the policies listed. Because, you know.
Well, we can do that shortly. Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Chair. I'm struggling with this one because, you know, when we look through the planning issues and principle of development, the paragraph 8 of the MPPF, one point within that, there are a couple of points that state things that I'm not really reading, but there is 1 point or 2 points within that. The development would be to reuse a redundant or disused building and enhance its immediate setting. I'm struggling because there are points within all this principle of development that you could read yourself and quite agree with. I'm with David on this one, and Heather to some degree. It's a chicken and egg thing. I read through some of this SDC 1 where they say, you know, about the bulk and design and the reuse without major alterations and adaptations. Do we consider that major? I think the applicant has actually tried with our planning team to get their take on it. It's not exactly doing it on retrospective planning or anything like that. So I'm struggling with it. I'm almost mindful to go against officer recommendation, but you know, I see points from both sides. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other comments? No? Right, thanks, colleagues. Having heard everything today and the officer's recommendations before us, what is the view of the committee on the application? I am now opening the floor to motions. Councillor Rouse.
Thank you. Can I say that we go with officers' recommendations, please?
We have a seconder. Councillor Leggett, second that.
I'll second that, Chair.
Got a third. Right, we'll take that to the vote.
Okay, Chair, the motion is to approve officer recommendations. Councillor Cheetham.
For.
Councillor Cooper. Councillor Elliott. Councillor Fawcett. Councillor Foster.
For.
Councillor Gurr. Councillor Hancock.
Against.
Councillor Hartshorn.
For.
Councillor Lacey.
For.
Councillor Liggett.
For.
And Councillor Rouse.
For.
That's 8 for the motion, 2 against and 1 abstains. The motion has passed, Chair.
Thank you. You can leave the chairman. Thank you. Right, I think now officers are in place. We'll move on to the 5th application. In line with our normal practices, I'm going to ask the planning officers to tell us about any late comments and give any brief presentation showing any photos and plans of the site. I will allow the officers to complete their presentation. Consequently, members, unless you have a point of order that you feel cannot wait, could you please reserve these or any other questions about the process until the end? And this is application NED/23/00155/FL Drumfield. Thank you. I'll go to Kenneth.
Hi, I'm Ken Huckle. I'm one of the planning officers. The application in front of you is a proposed single-storey rear extension raised as part of the existing roof to accommodate a bedroom and an ensuite area with a side facing dormer window, a side facing dormer, beg your pardon, Velux roof windows and a Juliet balcony to the rear at 80 Shakespeare Crescent at Drumfield. The site is located within the settlement development limit of Drumfield and within an area of mid to late 20th century dwellings. The open land you see to the south and part to the northeast is part of the green belt of northeast Derbyshire.
Excuse me, Ken, can I just ask you to speak more directly into the mic? Thanks.
Okay, beg your pardon. How's that? Is that better? Just let me move things around a little bit. So yeah, that's that's the northeast Derbyshire green belt, just to recap there. However, the site is in the settlement development location. The arrangement of dwellings on site and in the area is not of a uniform front or rear building line, so there is some staggering between the two. But they are closely related to one another on the site, and that can be seen within the proposed location and the proposed plans. The proposed elevations show a two level effect on the roof to the front, and that is at the height of 1 meter, and it's 3.7 meters back from the principal elevation, creating a two level effect from the highway and serving to reduce the impact when viewed from the highway itself. There are to be 4 roof lights in the southern elevation, which is uphill in this case. And then on the northern elevation, there is to be a dormer, and there are to be 4 proposed windows in that dormer, with the Juliet balcony to the rear, as can be illustrated there. The single-story rear extension, the single-story rear extension will replace the conservatory and will extend right across the rear elevation of the site, and will have 2 windows to the northern elevation, as shown on the plan to the bottom right of the screen as you look at it. This picture just shows you the existing and proposed plan, so you're clear on that. So there's a little bit of clarity on that. Now, these are some photos that are important to consider as part of the considerations you've got to make. This shows the relationship at the rear between the site to the northeast, which is number 80, and the site to the southwest, which is number 78. Bear in mind that the Juliet balcony is to the rear in the centre of that elevation, and number 80, which is the one downhill, is where the dormer is going to be placed. We have had an objection from number 80, and the objection from number 80 covers 2 matters. The first is maintenance, which is a private and civil matter, and should be dealt with the applicant and their neighbour. The other part of that is about the overlooking of the rearmost of the dormer windows and the 2 side-facing windows in the rear extension. However, the objector, also states that should they be obscure glazed, they would not have an objection to those windows. And in the report, it is suggested that we take a condition in order to deal with that matter. There's another photo dealing with the relationship with number 78. And you can see that it is uphill, but the original dwellings also had side-facing windows as well. And again, number 80, where the possibly the key relationship in terms of amenity on site. And that's the end of the presentation.
Thank you. Right, colleagues, we have no speakers on this application, so we will move straight in onto questions to the officers. Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. It is the centre bungalow they're building on, isn't it? You know, when you go back a couple of pictures for my benefit.
Yeah, I'll just get bear with me a second while. Yeah, you see in that photo there, it's the one to the left with the open.
Councillor.
It's the one to the left with the open conservatory door.
The one that shows the bungalow above. We're talking about the elevation pointing downhill and obscuring the glass. The glass on the one above's not obscure. Almost like a conservatory.
No, that's true, and it is a conservatory, having been on site.
The windows on the elevation there, because on that side, similar. All the same as next door.
But that's the situation that you need to make a decision on.
I think that extension's probably been done under permitted development over time, and you know, people have bought that property knowing that situation. Yeah.
One more questions? Right, okay. Thank you to the officers for that. That leads on to the final part of the process, our discussion about what we have heard, what we think, and what we want to decide. I would now like to open the floor for debate. Councillor Cheetham.
I was going to say it looks a relatively non-controversial development compared to a lot of the ones that we deal with, so I can't really see a huge problem with it.
Councillor Lacey.
Chair, can I move that we accept?
In a second.
Yeah, I want to move that we accept.
So, Chairs, are you actually ending the discussion at this point?
No, not yet. Seeing nobody else wants to enter the debate. No. Right, members. Having heard everything today and the officer's recommendations before us, what is the view of the committee on the application? I am now opening the floor to motions.
Chair, I move that we accept this recommendation.
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you. Right, we'll move to the vote. Sorry, Councillor Cooper.
Can I just clarify, is that with or without the clear glass, or is that with that condition that glass is not clear, basically?
Yeah, can you please clarify that, Councillor Lacey?
Yes, Councillor Cooper, it's with the change the glazing, yeah. The obscure.
If I may, just to be clear, so in the list of conditions, we've got the proposed side-facing window is going to be obscurely glazed. So I believe the recommendation was in accordance with officer recommendation, wasn't it?
Right, we're going to take a roll call on that then.
So it's to approve officer recommendations with that clarification which we've just received, that the opaque windows are already part of the conditions. Councillor Cheetham.
For.
Councillor Cooper. Councillor Elliott.
For.
Councillor Fawcett.
For.
Councillor Foster.
For.
Councillor Gurr. Councillor Hancock,
For.
Councillor Hartshorn,
For.
Councillor Lacey,
For.
Councillor Liggett,
For.
Councillor Rouse. The vote's unanimous, Chair. The motion has passed.
Thank you. Right, we'll now move on to the sixth and final application. In line with our normal practices, I'm going to ask the planning officers to tell us about any late comments and to give a brief presentation showing any photos on plans on site. This is application NED//00457/FL Wingworth.
Thank you, Chair. There have been no late representations made to the committee, and this planning application seeks permission for a single-storey flat roof rear extension, a loft conversion, and the creation of a low-level retaining garden wall to form a patio. The application is reported to the planning committee in line with the council's constitution, as the applicant is an employee at North East Derbyshire Council and works within the planning team. The application site is located within the settlement development limits for Wingworth, where domestic extensions are acceptable in principle, and the statutory consultees have raised no reasons to refuse the application. As you can see from the next slide, this plan illustrates the application site shaded in yellow. The development will be to the rear of the property, with the only changes to the front being the inclusion of Velux windows, which could be constructed under permitted development. Then on this slide, you've got a more zoomed in version of the application site and the surrounding area, which illustrates the residential setting. And as you can see from it, there are quite large rear gardens as well. This is the official site location plan with the site edged in red. And you can see Central Drive running to the south, and the Dearlands Road junction to the southeast. And Central Drive extends west of the application site. And on this slide, you have your existing plans running across the top with existing elevations and an existing floor plan. Below, you have proposed elevations. And then in the bottom left corner, you have your proposed floor plan, which highlights the rear patio and the rear extension and the Velux windows in the roof. The rear extension will measure approximately 4.25 meters in length, 6 meters wide, and will have a height of 2.6 to match the eaves of the original dwelling. The proposed materials will match the host dwelling, and although, as previously stated, the Velux roof lights are included, they're only there for the completeness of the application, and they can be built under permitted development. And the patio to the rear demonstrates the retaining wall, which will be approximately 600 millimeters high. And next, I do have some site photos, and the present red arrow is just illustrative of an approximate location for the rear extension. And the next photo is a view from further down the garden, which illustrates the relationship between the application site and the two neighbouring properties. And that is the end of my presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We have no speakers on this application, so we'll move straight onto questions to the officers. Again, I would like to keep this part of the proceedings focused on getting clarity about any points that you are not sure of. So I'd be grateful if you would not move any motions at this stage. You have any questions for officers? No?
No, Chair. Curtis, has there been any letters of objection from immediate neighbours?
No.
Thank you very much, Curtis.
Thank you for that, Curtis, and well done on your first report to the planning committee. This leads us to the final part of the process, our discussion about what we heard, what we think, and what we want to decide. I would like to open the floor for debate.
Chair, given the size of the properties either side, I think it's just a small development on the rear of a building. I don't see any issue at all.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. Right, members, having heard everything today and the officer's recommendation before us, what is the view of the committee on the application? And I am now opening the floor to motions.
Chair, I'll move off the recommendation.
You beat Councillor Hancock there. Right, we'll take a vote on that by roll call.
Councillor Cheetham,
For.
Councillor Cooper, Councillor Elliott, Councillor Fawcett,
For.
Councillor Foster,
For.
Councillor Gurr, Councillor Hancock,
For.
Councillor Hartshorn,
For.
Councillor Lacey,
For.
and Councillor Liggett.
For.
The vote is unanimous, Chair. The motion has passed.
Thank you. I now call on the planning officers to explain the next report, item 11, appeals lodged and determined.
Thank you, Chair. Just to kind of briefly go through the report, really. In terms of the appeals lodged, you'll see that there are three there. Probably the one to highlight is the 36 dwellings, the third one, outline application at Kalo. I think, Graham will correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think we're waiting on from the planning inspectorate in terms of how that appeal will actually be handled. Probably whether it's going to be an informal hearing or an inquiry, basically. In terms of the appeals allowed, the first one, the 397 dwellings, Upperthorpe Road, Killamarsh, I think members are probably familiar with that one. At the moment, we are waiting on the costs decision. The applicant or the appellant applied for costs as part of that appeal. So we're still waiting on that, having chased the planning inspectorate for it. So I think probably that's going to be worthy of a further discussion once we've got that cost decision, and we can consider that in the round.
Chair, excuse me, sorry to interrupt you. Has there been any indication on that so far?
There's a point for questions later.
So just briefly, Chair, on the appeals dismissed, they actually both relate to the same site in Wessington, and relate to the first one is actually so retention of an agricultural implement store. So we're currently considering enforcement action potentially there, depending on whether the appellant wants to work with us to look at an alternative scheme. And the second one also relates to that same site. So I had nothing else to add, Chair. I can respond to the.
Yep, if you would.
So yeah, like I say, we've had the appeal decision through in relation to Upperthorpe Road, Killamarsh. We're waiting on the cost decision. There hasn't been any indication. I mean, basically, the decision will be either no award of costs, partial or full award. We're waiting. We haven't had anything, and we know that the applicant, for reasons probably self-explanatory, is also chasing. So we haven't heard anything on that. I think. I mean, the planning inspectorate, like us as a planning department, are measured on their performance in terms of timeliness of issuing actual decisions on the planning appeal. The costs decision can follow, so we're in that period basically.
No more questions? No. Oh, sorry, Councillor Liggett.
No, sorry, I just wondered, I realised that there's been appeal lodged in Shirland. I just wondered why it wasn't on here. It was it was a major development, 90-something houses, speeds off Hallfield Gate Lane. Oh, I'm being waved at the right.
Thank you, members. Do we agree to note the report? We will note. I have no urgent business, so now declare the meeting closed. Thank you for your attendance.